Welcome to the Friends of Fantasy Benefits Baseball Podcast. I'm Justin Mason, joined as always on Thursdays by Ray Kuhn. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I think we got a few things to talk about. I think there might have been an injury or two out there in the baseball world. I think as I was coming in here, I saw Robert Stevenson's now out for the year.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I look up, every time I check Twitter, every time I do anything, it's boom, there's another injury.
This is definitely going to be a year, not that every year isn't somewhat like this, but this one definitely already feels like it's just a battle of attrition. You're just trying to survive. Like, do you do a lot of gladiators or DCs?
Yeah, I have a few DCs where it's like, wait a second, this guy doesn't have any red next to his name. He's going in. It's not even all right. Let me take a look at the schedule. Let me take a look at the matchups. There's no red next to his name. You move up into the starting lineup.
Yeah, like I have one DC where I literally only have 9 healthy pitchers. And it's just like, and like this week I made a decision, like it was like Patrick Corbin versus the Dodgers or a 0. And I was just like, I'm taking 0. Like I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't do that to myself, unfortunately. But and then I've got gladiator teams like that are just completely decimated, that just have nobody healthy. And it really makes me wonder, like, as much as I love the gladiator format because you get to do a quick, cheap draft and then not have to set your lineup again, like, I mean, how much of it is just a lottery ticket?
Quite frankly, I haven't even looked at my gladiators. I don't have that many, but I haven't looked at them probably a week or two. Just self-preservation.
I literally at one point, so I have 3 gladiator teams. I was in 3rd place overall in the gladiator last week and on the same day in last place overall. Like that's just the kind of season it is this year. So.
And there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, I think we can go back and forth and we can get ourselves dizzy talking about the different reasons for why, but there's just certain things that are. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to draft pitchers.
Yeah.
But I mean, then you have like Albies gets hit by a pitch and breaks his toe. Stuff like that just happens. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it's just normal course of baseball that it's, it's like, all right, here's another hit.
Yeah. So Ozzy Albies does break his toe. This wasn't on the rundown, literally adding it as we talk. Obviously you're not dropping him anywhere, right? You're throwing him on your IL if you have IL spots, you're putting him on your reserve list. How worried are you about this? They said he doesn't need surgery, so maybe he's only out for a couple weeks.
I think comparatively speaking, I'm not worried about it because at the end of the day, depending on the league, he's probably better than, even if he goes back and he's not 100%, he's still going to be better than what you're going to find on the waiver in a 15 team league to replace him. So at this point, I mean, it's tough to carry him, and you kind of have to start to make decisions with some of the other IL guys. But I mean, for me, the league that I have him in my Earth League, and I got Romano back the same day that Albies went down. So from that perspective, it was just swapping a dead bench spot. But I think more and more it's going to get to the point as the season goes on where you have guys that are out for maybe 3 weeks is going to be the line of demarcation, where if someone's out 3 to 4 weeks, you're going to almost have to drop them no matter what, or it gets to the point that you're not really necessarily setting a lineup in elite, in a main or an OC with 7 bench spots, that you're pretty much just putting your healthy guys out there and letting it ride.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons why I preach, and I know it gets old, but like I don't add injury risk to your team coming into the season, because crap like this happens, and all of a sudden, you're in a pinch and you gotta make tough cuts. Unfortunately, speaking of guys in a pinch, I also added Rafael Devers is going to get an MRI on his knee. Hopefully this isn't serious, but like this is another one of those guys that like there was no reason to think Rafael Devers was going to have any injury issues coming into the season, but it seems like he has been banged up every single day. He's dealt with a shoulder issue. I think he had like a back issue at one point, and now he's got this knee issue. How worried are you on Rafael Devers?
Again, I'm a little worried, but until we know more, you're kind of just in a holding period, and quite frankly, depending on your roster construction, depending on who else you have, he might just be sitting in your roster all week, and you might be stuck with him through the weekend, no matter what. And that gets back to the war of attrition. And I think this year, in a few leagues, what I've kind of started to notice, and again, we know everything is kind of cause and effect, and things run in cycles, that maybe there is something to the multi-position guys. That, not to say we're going to start overdrafting Rengifo and guys like that, but you get a little more bang for your buck on your bench if you're looking to maximize at-bats. And I found myself in a few places where somebody like a Kevin Biggio or a Josh Smith, where I have a little bit of flexibility and I'm looking to fill a hole, that maybe I'll target those guys ahead of similar players at the position I need, because I know that they can go multiple places.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the things I try to do with a lot of my teams. It doesn't always work out because sometimes people jump up those multi-positional guys, especially the triple eligible guys like the Ha-Seong Kims, the Luis Renifos. Like, they get jumped 2 or 3 rounds ahead of where they probably should go just because they offer this flexibility. But I mean, I think there is some kind of inherent value to having these guys that can move around your roster, because when you have a guy go down, like I'm in, obviously this is like a really weird league, but I'm in like a 30-team league, 30-team dynasty keeper-ish kind of league with 100-man rosters, right? Like there's nobody available on the wire. And I lost Ozzy Albies, like, right? And it's like, literally, I'm just like, there's nothing I can do. Like, there's just nothing I can do because, like, there's nothing out there. But if I had a guy on the team like a Luis Renifo, like a Ha-Seong Kim, like, I'd be able to move him around and go, okay, this is where, this is why I have this guy. So I just think it's so valuable to draft those guys, even if it's late.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, I think going into the season, everyone was like, oh, and again, there's no argument, Acuna's the best player. Acuna's the best player. People started jumping Strider late, which I get, obviously, but
in hindsight, it sucks, but there was a reason for it.
Exactly. There's logic behind it. But now looking back, it's like, should Mookie Betts have been going number 1? Because you have second base, shortstop, and outfield. And I mean, and he's hitting the crap out of the ball too.
Yeah. I made the argument that, especially when Acuna had the injury in spring training, and we were like, we don't know, like, is he going to miss time? Is he not going to miss time? And, like, how effective will he be when he's back? Like, I made the argument, like, I could see putting Mookie Betts up there. And I think it was just for this, right? Like, having second base and outfield eligibility to start the season, and then once we found out he was going to be playing shortstop, going, okay, now he's going to have triple eligibility. Yeah, I mean, a triple eligible stud, like, there's very few players as valuable as that.
Exactly.
Another guy who has been injured all year and is coming back is Justin Verlander. Speaking of guys on a couple of my DCs and Gladiator teams that I'm looking forward to adding back to my roster, are you starting Justin Verlander right away? And where are you at on him rest of the way?
Probably he's on my team. I'm starting him right away because it means that the rest of my pitching depth is probably non-existent at this point. The fact that he's facing Washington in his first start on Friday makes me feel a little better about it also. I mean, again, Verlander's not the same pitcher that he was a few years ago. He did get better second half of last year after he went to Houston. But, I mean, I think we started to see some cracks. Exit velocity went up last year. Ks went down. Walks went up. Even with that being said, he's still one of probably the more safer pitchers out there, that even if you get 5 innings, maybe 6, 2-3 runs out of him, I think you can do a lot worse, and I'm going to throw him in there right away.
Yeah, I think usually I'm the kind of person who goes like, I'm not going to start a guy their first start out, especially because you just don't know how many pitches he's going to be allowed to throw. Is he going to be as effective? He's probably rusty, not having faced like real hitters. I mean, obviously he's probably done simulated games and done minor league rehab, but like that's just not the same as pitching in the major leagues. I think Washington is one of the places you can attack with anybody. Like even if he only goes 4 innings, it'll probably be a pretty good 4 innings. So I'm not benching him this week. I'm rolling him out there in the leagues I've got him. So moving right along to our last piece of news, Garrett Whitlock to the IL with an oblique strain. These injuries typically take about 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. Are you holding on to Garrett Whitlock?
No, unfortunately, I'm not. I mean, I know they said that it's going to be quick, but to your point, regardless of what they say, 4 to 6 weeks, and it's still early enough in the season, he's going to have to get ramped back up. I think, I kind of liked him. I think he's probably towards the back end of your staff, and I'm not sure that he's somebody you can afford to carry for a month unless you have super deep benches.
Yeah, I mean, unless he's your only stash in like a no IL league. I mean, obviously, if you have room on your IL, but most teams don't have room on their IL at this point. So, and most teams don't have just one stash. But yeah, I can totally understand cutting him. Somebody in one of my leagues dropped him the week before last because he was available in FAAB this week. And I was like, what the hell are they doing? Like, I mean, I know like the skills aren't amazing necessarily with Garrett Whitlock, but the results have been fantastic. And like, I put a big bid on him. I missed out. Someone went like, I think $190. But now I'm wondering if that guy was a wizard. Like, did he have a crystal ball? Because like, there was no reason. It was a 15-team league too. Like, there's no reason to drop Garrett Whitlock in that depth of a league. But he knew something. So I'm gonna be watching that guy's FAAB pickups all year. All right, let's talk about some FAAB pickups. It is an interesting week. It is a week where there isn't necessarily a ton yet that's developed where we go, oh, like this guy's definitely going to be the big pickup of the week, but there's definitely some interesting situations to maybe take advantage of. The first is the Brewers closing situation. Abner Uribe, who seemed like he had kind of won the job, has kind of lost his grip on the job, and now Joel Payamps gets a save yesterday. Do you think Payamps is the guy moving forward? Do you think this is the committee, and would you be investing in him?
I mean, originally when Williams went down, I think a lot of people, I know I at least did, thought Payamps was going to be the guy. I mean, last year he had the 8th inning, did pretty well in the role last year, and he's pitched well to begin this year. So with the Uribe coming in earlier in games now, when McGill was healthy before he had the concussion, he was pitching 7th inning. So even when he comes back, I'm thinking that he's not going to be a threat. I mean, anything's possible. I think keep the bids relatively conservative, but if you need saves, and regardless, Payamps is a solid reliever who's going to get some more saves before the end of the year, even if he's not necessarily the full-time closer now. And if he helps with strikeouts and ratios, I would look to add him this week.
Yeah. I think, I mean, obviously, if you're in need of saves, like you go to the wire, you try to pick him up, right? But I also feel like this is a situation that could like change hands like 3 or 4 times. And so like I would not be going overboard. So like for instance, like Jeff Hoffman was available in a number of my leagues last week. And Kirby Yates, we're going to talk about next, is available in a few of my leagues. And I bid $37 out of 1,000 on them. And I got them in a number of spots, and I was happy with that. But like I also saw leagues where they both went for like $150, $200. I would not do that. Like that to me, like it just, you could, a week from now, we could, McGill could come back and be the guy. Uribe could get the next save the day after you pick him up, and you're all like, oh no. So to me, I think this is a little bit too nebulous of a situation. look, we got a comment in the chat, and a guy who I didn't have on the rundown is being referenced. So we're gonna throw Chad under the bus or put a spotlight on him because he said, "I need a hug because I'm a genius." He drafted Class A, but he had a bunch of other injuries and dropped Class A over the other prospects because he was least likely to get called up. And now he's going to have to spend a crap ton of staff to get him back. Jonathan Class A did get called up. This is an interesting prospect. He's got much more fantasy value than real life value. So if you look on like regular prospect lists, he's not super high. But you look on fantasy prospect lists, and he is a lot higher, a top 100 guy, even top 50 guy on some lists, because he just has an enormous amount of speed. I mean, this guy stole, I believe it was 79 bases last year between high A and double A. He's already got a stolen base in the majors. He is in the majors right now on the Mariners, replacing Dominic Canzone, who got injured. Any interest in Jonathan Class A?
Yeah, I added him in a few leagues Sunday night when I saw that he was being promoted. I know NFBC, he's going to be up there this week. And to me, he's a better version of Victor Scott. I'm not sure how much that counts, and I think ultimately it comes down to speed. He did hit like 20-something homers, around 20 homers last year, scored over 100 runs, had like 80 RBIs. Most of his time was in double A, but the batting average was rough. Strikeouts are a concern. And I think if he produces, he'll stay. But if he slumps, Canzone comes back, it's very possible that Seattle sends him back down to AAA. I think we have to have some level of conservatism, but at the same time, knowing that, hey, if he starts hitting and he gets on and he walks and he gets on base, the speed is real. I mean, he stole that base against Cincinnati yesterday with ease. He scored from second on a single. It's clear the guy is fast. So I think there's value there. He could mean a few standings points in a standalone league just on stolen bases alone, but at the same point, before you go out and commit 20-30% of your FAAB to him, it's going to be rough. And that being said, in one league where I picked him up, I actually traded him yesterday for Will Benson, figuring Benson runs also. Benson has 5 stolen bases this year. Again, strikeouts average are a little bit of a concern, but he has power and more of a well-defined role. So that's kind of how I'm looking at Class A.
Yeah, Class A is one of those guys he could steal just a crap ton of bases like overnight, right? Like if he could find his way, or not find his way, he's on the roster. If he could stay on the roster, like he could be, for those who are a little bit older, and I don't even know if Ray remembers Draw Dyson.
Yes.
Or like Rajay Davis. Like he could be one of these guys that like he only really gets like in a full season like 250 plate appearances, but steals 40 bases. Like he is arguably one of the fastest guy in the major leagues at this point. And so like when you have that kind of raw talent, like it's really, really intriguing. But he's also one of these guys that is probably a quad A player in general. Like, I don't know that he is necessarily, at least at this point, is really a major leaguer. I think he is just up because of the injury, which means he could go right back down. And while he is making 100% zone contact so far in his 12 plate appearances, he's also like hitting like 182. So he's making contact with everything. And it's just really weak contact. And it's like in the air, so it's like a lot of just pop-ups in the middle of the outfield.
That's the thing. Yeah, if he can take that 100% and get it on the ground,
yeah,
then he could be one of those guys that has a super high bat bit because he's that fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if he's going to put 70% of his balls in the air and not have like he has, it's below average power. Like that's the nicest way to put it. He does not have much power in the bat. And his contact skills are not good, or at least they haven't been in the minor leagues. So I'm not as big on Class A. Like I do have a league where like the only thing I need is stolen bases right now. Like I think I've got 8 stolen bases this year, but everything else I'm like killing it at. Like maybe I'll put a few bucks on him just in case he like pops off, but Like if David Hamilton's still on your wire, I'd rather have David Hamilton. Guys like that, like I think are better suited.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be more of a keep him honest type bid.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Kirby Yates. The Texas bullpen has been kind of a mess, right? Like, I think coming into draft season, we're like, Jose Leclerc's the guy, right? He closed out games in the World Series. Like, he should be the dude. But Bruce Bochy and the Rangers never wanted to commit to him, apparently. And even in spring, when they awarded him the job, he's like, he's the guy for now. Your World Series closer, you don't really believe in that much, and you're not being like, of course, he's our lockdown dude. Well, it's clear that there was a reason for that, because he has not been a lockdown dude, and he has lost his job. It looks like Kirby Yates is the guy. How aggressive would you be there?
Maybe a little more than Payamps, but probably about the same, because I think from a pitching perspective, I like Payamps better. But from a role perspective, Leclerc didn't do himself any favors. He allowed 9 runs already this year, 7 walks, took 2 losses. To your point, Robertson seemed to be that guy. Robertson's been doing well this year, but then he came in the 7th yesterday, blew his second save of the season. He still has a 1.69 ERA, but I think it's telling that that they did bring him in the 7th inning yesterday, and then Yates ended up coming on and getting the win. And he already has 2 wins, 2 holds, and a save this year. So he hasn't allowed a run in 7 innings. It seems to be he's the guy. Again, it could be very transient. So maybe around the same as Payamps, if not a few dollars higher, because the role seems to be a little more secure. But again, this is a situation where you have to be careful. And I think we're going to be having this conversation all season with any bullpen save opportunities that come up. I'm not sure that there's going to ever be this year in this climate a situation where, okay, player A gets hurt, everybody run and get player B because he's going to be the unequivocal guy. I think in most situations it's going to be kind of in flux. So I think you need to maybe be a little more cautious with your FAAB dollars to add a few of these guys at points throughout the season. I don't think we're going to get another Kevin Ginkel type situation.
Yeah, I think this is one of those spots, again, that it's going to be fluid, that it's going to be nebulous. Like, I do think that Kirby Yates is the guy for now, but you did mention David Robertson, who for the most part has pitched well this year. They could always go back to Jose Leclerc. They also could trade for someone at some point. Like, this is a team that just won a World Series. A lot of people thought that they were the front runner for Josh Hader, and they never went and got him. They never went back and got Jordan Montgomery. So, like, they have money to spend. And if they, they may just say, hey, listen, it's Kirby Yates for right now, or it's a rotation or a committee for right now. And then come August, come July, they go out and get like a lockdown, shutdown guy. So, like, again, if Kirby Yates is available in your league, you definitely should put some bids on him. I'm not going super crazy unless I'm desperate.
Yeah. And I think that's the other point, too, is how desperate are you? If you have 2 guys that you believe in, then I'm not spending triple digits to put them on my bench.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. It's not a podcast with Justin Mason unless we're talking about Sean Bouchard, who was surprisingly left off of the opening day roster. I mean, obviously it's the Rockies. They got a younger guy with promise, so they're not going to give him playing time. But Chris Bryant goes to the IL. Sean Bouchard is going to be on this team. He's not currently like penciled in to be like a starter with Bryant out. Are you picking up Sean Bouchard at all?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I think I have to say, first of all, it was good restraint that we waited until almost a half hour in to talk about him.
Yeah, thank you.
But I mean, we saw what he could do at the end of last year. He had success. He's hitting 315 so far in AAA. I think, it's the Rockies, but you kind of have to play the guy. You at this point, you know what you have in him, at least what you've seen so far. So you bring him up. Bryant, who knows how long Bryant's actually going to be out for again. I would pick him up. I don't know how crazy you need to go, and it could work to your benefit if he's not necessarily starting off the bat. But I think it's definitely worth throwing a few bucks on him.
Yeah, I do too. Right now, Michael Toglia is hitting like 120 something. 122. His triple slash is 122, 163, 415. He is hitting 122 with 4 home runs and 43 plate appearances this year. And that's who Michael Toglia is. Like, Michael Toglia is like very much like Joey Gallo-ish without as many walks. So I can't imagine that the Rockies will continue to run out Toglia like full-time in right field when you've got Sean Bouchard on the roster. Bouchard has shown the ability to hit for power. He showed a pretty good ability to make in-zone contact last year and in spring training. So like I'm biased, obviously. Dude won me a bunch of money last year, but I just think that this is a pretty easy kind of swoop. You get a guy in Colorado. Obviously, you want to use him in Colorado as opposed to using him on the road if you can, but I just think he is a pretty intriguing player with power in one of the best parks to hit in baseball, and not like completely slow, right? Like, I think he's got above average speed. He didn't run very much at all over the last couple years, but I think there is a little bit of speed in the profile too. So let's get Sean Bouchard on our teams, and hopefully the Rockies don't screw with us as they always seem to do. Any Pages? Is it Pages? I can never remember. Pages. Someone in the comments tell me how to pronounce it. This is a Dodgers prospect. He's made his major league debut. Dodgers outfield has been kind of a mess. It was always a little weird to me that they even moved Mookie Betts into the infield. I understand they wanted to kind of bolster that infield, but like, you've got a bunch of infielders in this system, and Betts is just such a strong outfielder. And the outfield there was an article, I can't remember if it was on Fangraphs or on MLB.com, just about how bad offensively and defensively their outfield has been. Pages is a power hitting outfielder that has just destroyed the minor leagues over and over and over again, and the Dodgers have yet to give him an opportunity. He's getting his opportunity now. What's your interest?
I have interest. I mean, I think of the guys that are on this rundown, he might be the one I'm most interested in going into the weekend. I mean, last year he wasn't really healthy. 2022, we saw the power, we saw the hit tool. He showed it so far AAA before he was promoted this year. I think there's certainly opportunity on the Dodgers. I mean, Gavin Lux has not shown much of anything. Chris Taylor's been terrible this year. Outman has not done well. Jason Hayward is Jason Hayward. Kike Hernandez is a utility player. And, I mean, he was batting, like, I think, 5th the other night. So, to me, the opportunity is here, but we're still talking about one of the better lineups in baseball, so there's not necessarily pressure on him. I think he could very much come up here, hit well, and stick.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I made some comments in draft season about Outman and how much I loved him last year, but I wasn't drafting him at his price this year, largely because I felt like Outman is one of those kind of really, really streaky players. Like, he doesn't make a great in-zone contact consistently, or as consistently as you'd like to see. And that he could go through struggles and then all of a sudden find himself out of a job. And I wonder if that's what we're starting to see with Outman, because he has not played particularly well. Pages is a guy, and actually, as I'm talking right now, I'm looking. It's Paez. Andy Paez. All right, that is how you pronounce it. So I want to make sure I pronounce it correctly. So Paez is a really interesting guy, and right now Roster Resource has him like not in a platoon. Like, they think he's going to play every day. If he does, like, he's really, really interesting, because I mean, this is a really good Dodgers team. He was crushing in AAA. hitting 371, 452, 694 with 5 home runs, 2 stolen bases in just 73 plate appearances. He doesn't necessarily profile as a guy who is a star in fantasy, but if he can make consistent contact, if he can like really put the ball in play, like I think he's got enough speed, he's got enough power that he could be really valuable in a stacked Dodgers lineup. The question is, I just don't know how long they'll stick with him if he struggles.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think you take the gamble, especially in like 15-team leagues. I think in 10s and 12s, he's probably more of a watch list guy. Let's see how much he's playing through the weekend. But in a 15-team league, I think you take the gamble and you hope that you strike gold.
I mean, I could see 2070 out of him.
Yeah, absolutely. If he's playing full-time, sure. The question is, I just don't know if he will. And again, this is another one of those teams at the deadline that could easily pick someone up, right? Like, they deferred all of their contracts to like, next millennia.
Exactly. But I think by the time we get to the deadline, either he's going to play himself out of a job or he's going to play himself into a job. And if they pick somebody up, it would come at someone else's expense.
That's a problem for July. Yeah. I'm not worried about June yet. So
yeah, that's July us.
So Jack Leiter is been called up and is going to jump into the rotation for the Rangers. This is a former top pick in MLB. And there are a lot of people that are really excited about him, in spite of the fact that like he hasn't necessarily been dominant in the minor leagues. Where are you at on Jack Leiter?
I think the big thing for him is going to be control command. I think the stuff is there. The pitchability is there. They obviously like what they saw already this season on the improvement in that area. So they said, hey, we're going to call him up. We know that they need pitching. So it's not necessarily surprising. I think they're still going to be cautious about managing his innings for the rest of the season. I'm not sure it's going to be like the Marlins sending Max Meyer down the other day. But I think, especially with Scherzer coming back and then Bradford coming back at some point, I think there's going to be some measure of conservatism there. But I think if he can truly harness that control, then he's worth adding. The question is, do we really believe that he can do it at the major league level after only seeing it for a few starts in AAA this year?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I don't know. I mean, a lot of it depends on, and I haven't checked recently, like, how long is Cody Bradford out for, right? Like, Cody Bradford was a guy, like, who I kind of dismissed in spring, and I probably shouldn't have because he's pitched really, really well so far this year. He goes to the IL with, like, a lower back strain. And this is one of the reasons that Leiter is brought back up. But they've already said that, like, Bradford is in the rotation. So that when Bradford comes back, like, he's going right back into the rotation. Leiter probably loses his job unless he's pitching the lights out. And as much as I love the pure stuff of Leiter, like, the command and control has been a real problem all throughout the minor leagues. Yes, he stopped walking guys this spring or this season. But like you said, it's only 3 or 4 starts in the minor leagues. 3 starts in the minor leagues so far this year. Like, how much are we really buying? And he's also giving up 2.5 homers per 9 so far. So the control may be, under control at the moment, but the command has not been. I think people are going to go crazy, especially if he goes out and shoves in his first start. And I don't think I would. I just don't know that he's going to be in the rotation very long.
No, and I honestly don't know. To your point, it's very easy because he's not going to pitch a lot of innings. If he walks a few guys, gives up 1 home run, and then you're looking at 3, and then he gets into a little more trouble, he could easily make 2 bad pitches and end up with 4 or 5 runs allowed in 3-4 innings. And then he's not going to be in the rotation very long. Scherzer comes back. I mean, again, this is the Rangers. It's very possible that Heaney or Gray or Eovaldi gets hurt, and then he ends up sticking around. So that's kind of the flip side of it. But given the way things are right now, I'll be bidding on him, but I'm not sure how aggressive I'm going to go.
Yeah, I just and I like I'm trying to search through Twitter right now to like see like they're calling Cody Bradford's issue just back soreness. Like they're not even calling it a strain. Like so like I mean this feels like he's down for 15 days and then he's probably back pretty quick. So I mean Leiter's got 15 days to prove his worth. But like you said, like he's not going to be a guy they're going to give 150 innings to. Especially if he struggles. Like, I mean, I don't want to see a guy struggle with command, but if I've got to choose between the two, especially a young guy, like I'd rather struggle a little bit more with command than I guess with control, because then at least he can get through innings a little bit quicker. And then you're maybe not, in a position where they shut you down quite as fast. But ultimately, I just think people are going to go crazy this weekend on Jack Leiter. I wouldn't. I'm just not going to. I'll keep bonus bids, but definitely not. All right. Greg is asking, J-Rod, Yaz, McCormick, does any of my three outfielders hit a home run before May? I have zero concern on J-Rod. I mean, like zero. I think Dave and I talked about him on Monday. You put him on the rundown. I just no concerns about J-Rod. He started off slow last year. Like, I don't care. Yaz and McCormick, though, any concerns there? Because I, as a Giants fan, looking at Luis Matos going, like, I think they should give Matos some run. I think Yaz is on a really, really short leash if he can't get things together. And I've never really been a McCormick guy. Like, I feel like one of the reasons they don't want him playing every day is because he's going to get exposed. And so far, they're not really giving him that full opportunity to play.
Yeah, Yaz, I'm not too high on. I think Matos, I think there's enough other guys there that there's some concern. McCormick, I think, will end up being okay. I mean, there's a lot of issues right now with the Astros in general, but the thing is, there's nobody necessarily behind him. That even if you want to limit his playing time, Jake Myers isn't someone that's going to necessarily come in and warrant being played every day. I mean, somebody like a Dubon could steal more at bats, but overall, I'm still not worried about McCormick.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more worried about McCormick than you. I do worry that like they don't trust him. And I mean, obviously he's not hitting, but it's still so early. Like you don't want to like, if you were a big McCormick fan coming into the season, like, I don't know that you should just be dumping him right away. The underlying skills aren't good though. 75% zone contact is 10% below league average. That is getting into like the Joey Gallivan kind of arena. When he is making contact, the majority of it is not hard contact. He is getting unlucky on like infield fly ball rate. Like he's got a 20% infield fly ball rate. Like that'll come back down to earth. He's been a 5% guy. So like he's gonna be better than he has been, but will he be? There are some people who are like, oh, he's gonna be 2020. He's gonna be better than 2020. And I almost wonder if like guys like McCormick, who for those who don't know, has kind of been a meme in the fantasy industry because he had a picture on NFBC that looked like he was an accountant. Like if some of these guys, like because we like to joke about them, get a little extra love when they shouldn't. Because like there's not a ton in the profile with McCormick where even prior to like the struggles this year, that where you went, oh, this guy's going to be a star. This guy's going to be a 2020 player.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you get to 2020, that's the absolute ceiling. You can consider it lucky. And part of the problem is the Astros lineup in general is struggling. So I think if everyone else kind of gets it together, then, rising tide type situation with McCormick. But I don't know that there's anybody better out there. I think with Yaz, I think you could probably find somebody that's at least equal, if not better, or has a little more upside. I'm not sure you're going to find somebody better than McCormick at this point on the wire, unless you're in truly like an 8 or 10 team league.
Well, maybe you could find this guy who's still available in like I think it's like 60% of CBS leagues. He signed late, but he's been producing so far this year. And I'm talking about Jurickson Profar. He's hit 2 home runs, 13 RBIs, hitting 299, 405, 478 so far this year. Playing every day with San Diego, and he had extras in Jurickson Profar.
Half the battle is showing up this year. So at the end of the day, so if I'm looking for at bats, there's nothing that he does that truly knocks my socks off. He has a 353 BABIP, 265 X batting average, 376 X slug. So I'm not jumping up and down over him, but he's hitting well. He's playing every day. It's not the best lineup, not the worst lineup. If I'm looking to truly fill a gap, if I have an injury or somebody truly underperforming, I'm going to throw a few bucks down on him.
He's currently, he's hit most of the year at the 5 or 6 slot, but last few games he's been hitting third. Now, I agree with you, like, there's nothing in Jurickson Profar's profile where you go, oh, this is a stud, like, this is a breakout. Like, for those who, Profar's been around the league, or at least the minor leagues, for a really, really long time. Famously, the Rangers refused to include him in a Giancarlo Stanton deal when the Marlins are trying to trade Stanton at the top of his value, because Profar was like such a highly regarded prospect, talking about like best prospect in baseball, or at least one of them. He just never developed into the guy that people thought he was going to be. That being said, like, he doesn't strike out. Like, he's had pretty much a sub 20% strikeout rate his entire career. There is a little bit of pop. He's making 93.5% zone contact so far this year, which is elite. If you need batting average, like, how many leagues, like, do people need batting average? And it's almost impossible to get off the wire. Like, if he's sitting third in this lineup and putting up a 280, 290 batting average, like, that's going to have value.
Even a 260 batting average at this point probably adds value based on what's on the wire and based on how some of these guys are hitting. So I think he's somebody that we can't just look at and say, yeah, he's boring. In some situations, boring is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if he's batting third.
Yeah. Wes in the chat asks, Ahmed Rosario's hitting third today. Any interest in him?
Yeah, I think he's somebody that's been on a few of my teams all season. I have interest in him. I think we know the Rays do interesting things with lineups. They play the platoons, play the splits. Rosario batting third is something we can't necessarily overlook. I think there's he was a top prospect a few years ago. I think there's some power speed, and maybe he's a middle infield version of Profar to kind of continue that conversation. And I think there's benefit in the fact that he's eligible at second and short, and the Rays are going to kind of maximize his playing time to his best, to best fit his situation. So I would go after Rosario.
Yeah, Rosario is one of those guys that, again, like, he's a better fantasy player than he is a real life player, because, like, he is really poor defensively. But this kind of goes back to one of the things we talked about kind of at the start of the show in terms of positional flexibility, right? He came into the year with second and shortstop in most leagues, and now he's played 10 games in the outfield. So he's got outfield eligibility. I love those guys. I love the guys who can move from infield to outfield, because you can cover, a guy like Ahmed Rosario can now, came to the season being able to cover your second base, your shortstop, and your middle infield. Now you get to cover outfield. The ability to move him around, especially in deeper formats, but even some like deeper 12s, like, I think it makes a lot of sense. And he's crushing the ball right now. He's hitting 328, 339, 500 with 2 home runs. There's power. There's definitely speed as well. I think the question always becomes, how much are the Rays going to play him? And if you're playing in a weekly league, like, is he going to be frustrating? Because, like, he may play 4 out of 6 games. He may play 5 out of 6 games. He also sometimes may play like 2 out of 6 games, and that's like super annoying. And actively hurts you. So, I like him more in like a daily lineups league than I do in a weekly lineups league, or even maybe like an NFBC league over a weekly lineups league. But I do like Rosario. All right. Moving right along. Edward Cabrera made his debut this season. He started the year on the IL. Looked really good. I mean, I've never been an Edward Cabrera guy, but he's going to be a big pickup this week in leagues where he wasn't drafted. Are you picking up Edward Cabrera?
I'm going to try to pick him up. I don't know how big I'm going to be. His question is, he only walked one guy in 6 innings. Are we going to draw the conclusion that after that one start all of a sudden he's magically figured out his control and he's not going to walk 4 or 5 guys through 9 innings? The strikeouts, he struck out 10. We know the strikeouts are always going to be there, but ultimately it's the walks that get him into trouble. I mean, and he's had some injury issues in the past too. So you almost have to kind of pick him up with the perspective of, yeah, I'm going to stream him, and it's possible he gets hurt again and he goes back to the wire. If he stays healthy all season, if he's magically figured out his control, then it could be one of the better pickups of the season. But the question is, how much do you want to throw down on the 20% chance that it happens?
Yeah, I mean, I know he looked great in this outing. But like, we don't have to go very far, like you mentioned, to see like the massive control bombs. You just go to the minor leagues. You can go to his minor league rehab assignments where he walked 8 guys in like 12 innings. Like, I mean, he's just not a guy that can find the zone consistently. And while there's a ton of strikeout upside, there is injury risk. He also plays on the Marlins, which is not going to be a good team. Like, so now you're telling me a guy, he's going to get your strikeouts, but he's not going to get you wins. Maybe he gets you a decent ERA, but he's not going to get you a good whip. The starting pitchers contribute to 4 of the 5 categories. If you can't get wins and you're probably not going to have a good whip, he's contributing to 2. Like, that's he will, in 15-team leagues, he will be in my waterfall. He will be in my bid list. He will not be a guy that I'm like going all out for. And there's, in every single league you play in, there is a Edward Cabrera truther that will go all in on him. Somebody is going to drop triple digits out of $1,000 FAAB in every single league, and it won't be me.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think if we're having this conversation in August, and I'm looking at it saying, you know what, my whip kind of is DOA, and I'm looking at a standalone league, and I need Ks, then I'm going to be more aggressive, and I'm not going to necessarily worry about the damage it can do to my whip.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's finish up with Forrest Whitley. Forrest Whitley was, I think, the top pitching prospect in all of baseball at one point, but combinations of, I believe, a suspension for drugs and injuries and just underperformance. He's never been able to kind of deliver on that promise and has spent his entire career just kind of toiling around the minor leagues. He has also been called up. Any interest in Forrest Whitley?
Well, I think they've already sent him back down.
Oh, have they?
to bring Verlander up for Friday.
Oh, okay.
That being said, I mean, the stuff is the stuff. The talent is the talent. I think at this point he's set as being a reliever. So from a fantasy perspective, I'm not sure there's value. I mean, granted, Ronald Blanco did great in spring training, but I think it's telling that you've seen guys like JP France, Ronald Blanco move into the rotation and Trump Whitley, and they're looking at Whitley strictly as a reliever. And some of the guys that the Astros have in the back end, in the fungible part of their bullpen, talent-wise compared to Whitley, Whitley is far and away better, I think, from a talent and a stuff perspective. So right now, the way they're looking at him is with no fantasy value. I think things kind of really have to go downhill, whether it be a fire sale or something in Houston for him to truly have value. But at this point, he's not stretched out to pop into the rotation. And at some point, they're getting Verlander back. They're going to start to get other guys back towards mid-year.
I didn't even see they sent him right back down. So obviously not picking him up this week. I mean, I kind of root for the kid because I always feel for the guys who were like these top tier prospects. Everybody, I mean, people said he was like a, can't miss kind of guy as long as he stayed healthy. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, but there has been, other issues, performance off the field that have contributed. You'd like to see the kid get things right, but yeah, that's a conversation for later if he ever does come back. So
yeah, 100%. And I think he can salvage a major league career here.
Yeah,
and I hope he does. I just don't know what kind of fantasy value it'll have.
Absolutely. All right, that is going to wrap us up for the podcast. Ray, I want to remind everybody where you can reach on social media and plug anything you got going on.
Find me on X at Ray_Kuhn_28, and you can find my work over at Fantrax. My waiver wire preview for the upcoming weekend dropped this morning.
All right. You can find me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Actually, any social media platform. Justin Mason, FWFB. You can email me or the show, friendsfantasybenefits@gmail.com. I am recording on the Sleeper and the Bust, I think 3 to 4 times a week. Here, 2 times a week, I'm writing 5 days a week over at Fangraphs and 3 days a week at Fantasy Pros. For Ray and myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season.